Hello there and welcome. I got you a new build for the freshly reworked Mystic faction. It utilizes the summoning school and it utilizes elementals and it is absolutely busted. Due to the fact that elementals were already super strong before the rework, we have now the old status quo plus all the new tools that the Mystic summoners offer and it is wild. I love to introduce this, and in the typical manner, we start with racial and cultural stuff first. So, I went here for a race where I was, for one, experimenting, empowered by magic. I wanted to try that out, but arcane focus is absolutely a must-have for any mystic culture build, in my humble opinion, as we have so many magic users. Empowered by magic, I would directly replace that with with the one that gives you more accuracy for your ranged units, as you will use quite a lot of cultural battle mages. So that would be a really good replacement. I mean, there is nothing too wrong with that one, but I'm a little bit underimpressed by it. Adaptable can be replaced if you want to with another +1 trade, but I gotta say, since the new rework or the new update has made a much higher impact on the ranks of your units, this one is a hidden superstar currently because it is dirt cheap and it has a huge impact on making your units stronger. Okay, next up, the cultural traits. I went straight up for mana channelers because so many reasons. Cheaper mana costs are always good, but the +1 rank is very important because we are playing evolving elementals, so there's absolutely nothing to nothing to not love about this one. Runesmiths was the other one I went for out of two reasons. Obviously, unit enchantments rock, and we do have a lot of these. And the other thing is we have shield units that we occasionally use, but most of the time not. But we're tier 1 pole arms, they profit from that. And you start with a bit more units. But this is, in my opinion, much easier to replace than this one. But let me know what you think. Alright, that's that point. I think there's not much more to say. Let's head on over to the tomes. So, with this build, I started out with the Tome of Evocation because, in all honesty, I see it as still one of the most synergistic tomes with the mystic culture in general. Lightning focus goes so darned well into pretty much all of your units, giving them more punch with their battle mage attacks. Fulmination is a wonderful 1 hex radius spell, and since all of our battle spells heal and empower our magic origin units, that's a caveat from the summoners, this is really cool. Lightning blades goes super well into our build as well. As you see here, I have a pretty heavy bias towards melee units, and the Lesser Storm Spirit gives you a really strong tier 3 shock trooper once you got them through the incubation phase. The Evokers are a really good upgrade to your tier 1 battle mages, so use them as soon as you can afford them. And Lightning Torrent always has been a useful little side thing, although I gotta say, it's the least useful thing. Channeling towers are amazing because we can't have too much mana, and lightning weapons goes into any hero build quite decently. Tome of Rock is the next one that I went for. Lesser Stone Spirits are the backbone of our frontline. They eventually evolve into tier 3 models of themselves, which are amazing. They are super tanky, but they can also jump into the enemy's backline and utilize with Quake a huge burst of immobilization. Do that twice or thrice and suddenly enemy banners can't move anymore. It's a really naughty little trick, and eventually you have access to these. Rock Blast is, I think I have missed the point where it got reworked into a super awesome spell, which now kicks enemies out of their defense modes or punches their retaliation attacks away, or both. This is really cool if one shield unit protects an entire little banner from damage. Really cool stuff. Amazing spell. Can't say how much I love this one. Gargoyles are a good intermediate unit if you are not at the tier 3 storm elementals yet. They are really cool as they are resilient, their defense mode lets them heal a bit, they fly, and they're quite cheap, so there's nothing bad to say about these. Obsidian weapons, well, I love it. It's Bleeding is not that much of a threat, but it really upgrades your front line's potential to wear the enemy down in a really, really cool way. Earth can, well, if you have the time to research it, go for it, but it is not that important for this build because I ended up with fielding mostly Magic Origin units with a splice of cultural, like 60%, 60-40 with a bias towards 70-30. So this one is a little bit less important. Stone Skin is a pretty nice little steroid for defense's sake. If the enemy isn't shooting with spirit resistance, this pumps up the defenses of a unit massively with almost no cost. It's a really, really cool spell, considering the effect versus the cost. It does cost you a spell per turn, though, which is its real problem. Anyways, moving on over to tier 2, because we don't have that much more to say about this. Central Quarry, it's nice. End of the line. Tome of Summoning. Obviously, when you're playing Magic Origin units, this one can't be skipped. Arcane Restoration ends up with a battlefield-wide heal spell, which heals 35, not only 25, because we have, like I said, every battlefield spell does that. So this one does for your Magic Origin unit 35 healing and 1 stack of strengthened. Wow. Big wow. Arcane Supercharge allows you to just let one guy go Super Saiyan, and Arcane Bond shuts down the enemy Magic Origin units, which is a pretty nice thing, because I love to be not vulnerable against my own strategy. The Astral Serpent is a real pain in the rear. They can teleport into the enemy, and I gotta say, at this point you already have 3 tier 3 units that have an ability to teleport behind the enemy. This stacks up, and it's really, really powerful. Then we got the Astral Keeper, which is a battlefield summon, due to our cultural traits, Dirt Cheap himself as well, and they can, again, heal people, and they can trigger another wonderful healing AoE burst when they die, and they can even kill themselves by now. Also, feature a pretty decent ranged attack. I really like these guys, considering only 10 mana. This is really big. So, what's left to say? Get those Wisp Familiars, as they are amazing, and the Summoning Wells are also pretty cool, because we're playing Mystics and we're garnered with Conduit and Research Post upgrades all over the board, so that is pretty cool. The real big deal here is it makes you darned hard to conquer, because if you defend in your home turf, well, you can summon so much. With that lessened combat summon spell thing, it is something easy to miss out on. Artificing is the other tier 2 tome I went for, because it synergizes so darn well, and it just amps up everything we are already doing well at. Artisan Armaments gives your entire Magic Origin frontliners that crit behind their punch, and that is really nice. 30% is a lot, and due to the fact that your Magic Origin units will always have a high morale to begin with, because that's how the summoners work. Every cultural unit boosts the morale of the Magic Origin units. You have a decent critical hit chance alone with that one. Bolt Repeaters are really cool as fortification breakers in sieges. I underestimated how cool they are until I tried them out a few times. And Siege Magic, yeah, well, what can I say? 10% more damage for your entire magical backline. Hell yeah. Also giving them the ability to be useful in sieges, in terms of making sieges happen faster. So this build is not only very resilient and able to dive into the enemy backline, it also ends up being really good and conquering other cities. Artisan Fortification returns the favor onto your side and makes it hard to conquer your cities. And to add icing on the cake, we not only have Wisp Familiar, we also have Iron Golem Assistant, and at this point your heroes theoretically can field 2 free summons at the beginning of the fight. Big stuff. Really, really big stuff. Don't miss out on the Golem Mine, because mines are really cool, as we can modify them to give you mana via the Materium tree, and as you see here, this build is very, very strong in the Materium side of things. So, that ends up tier 2, and at that point you're ready to conquer the world. I just want to say that. You are really, really powerful at that point. I add up things here to the Tome of Transmutation first for tier 3, as I personally see this as a real huge power card. Melt Armor is yet another super good nuker, as it also softens up the enemy. It is really amazing. Adaptive armor gives your troops a really nice extra resilience, as if we weren't already hard enough to kill. And steel skin, yeah, this is also another thing where I can say it is quite nice, as it bolsters up your backline, but it is mostly your backline. Keep that in mind. Transmute resources is pretty nifty, as you can boost up the output of a city with this pretty heavily, and at some point in the game you don't need all the mana production anymore. There is a very high demand on mana for the very first 50 or 40 turns for the game, and then you quickly overproduce, and that's why this one is really nice, as it allows you to boost up your cities and boost up your economy. I slept on that spell quite a while, but it is more powerful than I thought. Transmuters are the top line of your utility. They destroy the enemy's defense, and they have a 1 hex radius stun spell. That's primary reason why I love these guys so much. Their damage is subpar, so don't use them with the thought that you bring in huge damage dealers. It's this one. This stuff is what you came for, as it can totally turn the tide of the battle if in a 1 hex radius area the enemies can't attack anymore or move anymore. Transmutation circles are also massively powerful, as they allow you then to create all the artifacts that you want to, as long as you have enough cities to build enough transmutation circles in, because you can just mimic all the magic materials that you're missing. Pretty big stuff as well. So, where do we end with this one? We will go either deeper into the Materium side of things. This is personally my preferred path here, so that would be Terramancy, as Terramancy gives me permanent access to the tier 3 stone spirits, which is amazing, alongside with a nice side of battlefield magic to take control where I need it over certain enemies that are detrimental for my strategy, and it also makes my city conquering gameplay tremendously more powerful. The excavated ley line is also really cool, as it gives you pretty much everything you would wish for, especially the world map casting points are really juicy. In the tier 4 side of things, well, it is a little bit harder, as the Materium side is not really interesting. The Tome of the Crucible, you will be not able to use meteor arrows, and that is a real shame, as this is a real big sales point of that one. The Golden Realm is pretty cool, but we are not all too much into golems, but at the end of the line, this is one of the best also magic origin units that you can barter for in the tier 4 side of things. I personally love Tome of Severing. You could run for that one, as the Severing Golem is again more utility on. This book is all about disabling the enemy's unit enchantments, and it's really good at that. Also, it boosts shield units, which is something you really have a lot of, and last but not least, the final banishment counters necromancers, so this book has its qualities on that end. The other side where you could go for in the tier 4 realm is Astral, as Astral Convergence is, in my humble opinion, almost a must-have. It goes so well in everything we already do. It's more battlefield magic, but it also boosts our backliners by gaining positive status effects whenever spells get cast. So finally, not only your magic origin units get boosted, and the rest is just more of amplifying what we are already good at. Astral Mirror is pretty good if you don't know what you're going to pick, as it gives you the ability to just counter what the enemy does really well. That's why I love this one, as there's pretty much never a bad moment for the Astral Mirror Tome. And in the end of things, you of course want to dive into the Tome of the Creator, because you're playing elementals after all, and the undying trait on them is just yeah. They come back after 2 turns, have fun. The rest of the things here are also really cool. Yeah, tier 5 tomes. Okay, let's talk units and then strategy. So your roster that you'll be using will be at the beginning Arcane Guards and Arcanists. These, though, are, in my opinion, really the ones that you should try to use the least, as they will ultimately be replaced by all the other stuff. The benefit of that is, with the new Mystic update, tier 1 units, when they reach the end of their career, are really powerful, so whatever tier 1 units you have left over from your early expansion phase can then defend your home turf. pretty solid usage for those. But don't expand too hard into these. What you're really after is to get into the tier 2 side of things as quick as possible. Nowadays we need a tier 2 town hall for every tier 2 unit, so keep that in mind. No more cheap early gargoyles or evokers or stuff like that. So, bottom line, gargoyles should only be used if you're really pressed to. They are, in any aspect, being overshadowed by the storm elementals later. The suitors are absolutely a must-have, as they're decreasing the cost of your spells and they are the only healing unit you got. And due to this, I strongly recommend healing skills on your heroes. Goes a long way. And spell shields, well, I skipped them entirely for the favor of my earth elementals, and I strongly recommend you to do the same, as they're just the inferior version of your earth elementals. But you could use them for their AoE frontline stun if you want to mix in one or two. It's not a bad idea, but I personally found the earth elementals much more powerful. The real centerpiece of your armies, of your cultural units, is the summoner. The summoner is a new unit that gives you the ability to summon a new elemental or whatever, depending on what spells you've cast. Since we are running Materium and Astral, you have access to Lesser Storm and Stone Spirits by these guys. And they have Astral Bond, which allows you to just power up yet another magic origin unit. As you see here, it allows the summoner to retain his turn, so the course of action is bonding, then summoning, bonding, then shooting. Really, really, really powerful stuff. As these guys fill the battlefield, they are strong supporters for your own native magic units, and yeah, it's crazy. These guys are really, really desirable. Their only downside is that their destructive potential is relatively low. Being supporters, they don't have the same smack as a battle mage unit. That being said, we move over to our magical units. There we go. So on this end, you run these guys. I already introduced the earth elementals and I talked about them. They're teleport via phasing and quaking, I already mentioned. The storm elementals on the other side are shock turpers that have a electrification AoE. This is really, really brutal. The other really cool part about them is that they're running wind barrier, which means these guys are excellent counters against any ranged attackers. This is a trump card. So basically you have these guys against melee units and these guys against ranged units. Your only weakness here is still magical damage to some degree, but to some degree, as I must say, these guys are pretty unflinching at the same time. Okay, apart from that, we will use, of course, also the gargoyles. Want to mention how good the stone skin ability on these guys is, as they can boost themselves and heal themselves, which is really, really cool. And yeah, that's the majority of your roster. High-end units don't need to be mentioned here at that point too much, as they are pretty clear cut what they do. Now, strategy-wise, the really interesting point about the Summoner School, which I want to stress out right from the get-go, is that you can use Astral Echoes to promote units. This gives this build an insanely fast access to this. Boom. Tier 3 shield unit. So basically you collect enough Astral Echoes and you have an obscenely fast access to tier 3 elementals. I haven't seen anything this fast ever before in Age of Wonders in terms of evolving my elementals to power. This also means you want to keep these guys. This also means that you could use the same, though, the echoes, also to power up your high tier magic origin units at the same time, so choose wisely. But yeah, that's one thing. The other point, leader wise, I think this build goes best with the Wizard King. You could also opt into Dragon or Eldritch Ruler, obviously, but the Wizard King's big mainstay here is that they can overcharge abilities, and they are, or give you the ability to cast twice per turn, which is massive for this build, and their advantages just go so well for this entire build due to the emphasis on spell casting in the battle situation, and nobody does that better than a Wizard King, in my humble opinion. For the heroes, I focused on summoning more elementals, and of course, mass rejuvenation is a pretty good thing. I stayed pretty strong on the supportive side of skills, as we can conjure astral wards, which are basically shield monoliths that tank the damage for the unit that they are linked to. Experienced leader, obviously a very strong trump card in leveling up passively your units now. Has become one hell of a trait now. And obviously Golem Assistant. Spirit Summoning gives you the same ability as your summoners. And Master Summoner powers up Magic Origin units even further. Yeah, so your strategy obviously should be to grab yourself 2 cities or 3 cities as fast as possible, because that's just what we always do. And mana sources. Your build revolves strongly around mana sources. So your cities should utilize that by building shrines and all the mana buildings as fast as possible. So this build is very interested in quarries and all the buildings that boost these structures that yield mana, because I personally have discovered, due to the fact that you can get yourself such an early grasp on tier 3 units, you also have an insane hunger for mana, because obviously you need to pay the upkeep of these units somehow. So, in a grand total, this is one of the most busted builds that I've ever tried, because you should not have that quick access to tier 3 units ever, but you do with this build. And on top of that, every spell you cast heals your elementals and strengthens them. And with the tomes that I have chosen for this build, you have one hell of a brick front line. If you were asking to end this video why I am not using the other elementals, that's because Pyromancy and Cryomancy are really a much less good fit than the other tomes that I chose. In both cases, Pyromancy, you toss away the fiery arrows because you can't use them, and with Cryomancy, you also do the same. And the worst of this, you can't use them both at the same time because they don't play nicely to each other. If you wanted to go for it, I would recommend, though, to replace Evocation. You cut a lot out of your power budget from your battle mages, cut out the rock elementals, you cut out a lot of your frontlining capabilities. So I really haven't found a better path. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Leave a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Let me know what other builds you want to see. I'm already working like crazy ever since Eldritch Realms hit town. There's so many cool new ways to go for. Let me know what you think. Check out the description box, lots of links down there. Feel free to support the channel via Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, direct donations, YouTube membership, whatever. I'm really happy and say thanks to everybody who supports this channel. And a big thanks especially to you for watching this video until the very end. This is really nice of you. It means more to me than you might think. So, have a wonderful day and see you around.